This is how I finally quit smoking weed after almost 50 failed attempts and literally 5 years straight of trying. Now, that's a really long time to be doing something and not accomplish the thing that you wanted to do within that amount of time. And you guys are probably in the same boat right now. Weed probably has a huge grip on you. You watching this video right now, you're probably the type of person who told themselves that they're going to quit multiple different times. And maybe you have quit. Maybe you've quit for a couple weeks, a couple months, a couple days, whatever. But what ends up happening? We kind of just like creeps up back into your life and you don't even know it. It's kind of like a silent just assassin like Naruto or some shit like that, where it just like creeps up back into your life and you don't even know it until after. Like you quit for a couple of months and then you tell yourself like, yeah, whatever, I'll just do it on the weekends. And then you're like, oh, whatever, I can get away with smoking in the nighttime. And you kind of just justify it in your brain. And it gets to the point where you're like, oh fuck, now I'm smoking every single day now, multiple times a day. It happens to every single person that I know that's wanting to quit smoking weed. Every single one without exception this has happened to. And that's because a plethora of different reasons I'm going to be talking about in this video. What I'm going to be talking about in this video is how to actually quit, how to actually stick with your word and take full control over your weed addiction. And one thing that I'm going to say right now is that it's not willpower. Willpower will not work. It will never work. It's never worked for anyone I know who's tried to quit smoking weed. So if you're trying to use willpower right now, just throw that out the window because that's not going to work. Now, before I talk about all that, first I'm just going to go a bit into my story. So I used to be one of the biggest stoners I've ever known in my life. Like I was smoking 5 times a day, 5 blunts a day. And this was back in the day when weed costed like $5 every time I wanted to smoke because it wasn't legal in Canada yet. So every time I wanted to smoke, I was spending $5, smoking about like 5 spliffs a day before school, after school. Whenever I had the chance to smoke weed, I was smoking. So I was basically perma-fried. Now, the reason why I wanted to even quit smoking weed in the first place is because of the fact that I ended up taking magic mushrooms. So if anyone has taken magic mushrooms who's watching this video right now, you know that when you take mushrooms, it's kind of like a therapy session with yourself. It kind of like puts a mirror in front of you and shows you all your inadequacies and shows you like everything within your life that you need to improve. And it'll take your problems and just throw it in your face and be like, yo, deal with that shit. So that's exactly what happened. When I was off these magic mushrooms, it kind of showed me like what my life would have looked like if I didn't start smoking weed in the first place. It kind of showed me that like I would be in a whole different position if I didn't start smoking weed in the first place, because when I started smoking weed, like I stopped taking my life seriously at all. Like I stopped taking my career seriously. I was a barber back in high school, and when I started smoking weed, the only reason why I was cutting hair in the first place is so I had money to buy weed and then buy food after I smoked weed. So I wasn't taking anything serious at all. I stopped taking school seriously. I stopped taking my grades seriously. I stopped taking just life seriously, and it ended up ruining essentially like everything within my life. Like I used to be a super vibrant, talkative guy. After I started smoking weed, it ended up just like shrinking my social skills. It ended up making me like super socially awkward. Like I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't talk to females. I had no game, bro. It literally just stripped all my game. But before I started smoking weed, like I was fine. Like I could talk to people. I had some game, you know what I'm saying? But after I started smoking weed, just everything ended up crumbling and falling apart. Now, the dangerous thing about weed is that it takes a long time and it takes a lot of self-awareness and retrospect to even notice that it's affecting your life in the first place. Because the thing about weed, it's not like fucking fentanyl where people are folded in half in the middle of the street, or like crackheads on the street who are freaking clawing their eyes out to get some fucking like one rock of crack or whatever. No, it's not like that. Weed is super gradual. Its effects on you are super gradual, so it's pretty hard to notice what it's actually doing to you. But the only way you're even able to notice what it's doing to you is if you zoom out and kind of look at what your life looked like before versus after. You kind of got to ask different people like, yo, how was I before weed versus after I started smoking weed? And a lot of people's parents will even know. Like your parents will tell you like, yo, like a couple years ago before you started smoking weed, if they even know you smoked weed in the first place, they'd probably say like, yeah, you're a lot more talkative back in the day. You're a lot more like vibrant back in the day. But what happened to you now? Like my mom thought I was fucking depressed for the longest time, but really I was just high all the time and I didn't want to talk. Like now I'm just going to cover this quickly. The reason why this happens is because of the fact that weed fucks up your brain chemistry, and a lot of people don't know this. And when I say it fucks up your brain chemistry, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's bullshit. The science says it doesn't. You can smoke weed. I mean, this, that. No, that's complete bullshit. Just shut up, bro. Like you know it fucks up your brain chemistry, but you're trying to like justify that it doesn't. The reason why it messes up your brain chemistry is because its effects on your dopamine and your serotonin. When you smoke weed, the thing that you need to realize is that what you're doing is you're basically skyrocketing your dopamine to a point where it's super unnatural, and then it ends up basically plummeting below its natural baseline. So when you smoke a bunch of weed, you're skyrocketing these chemicals in your brain that aren't supposed to be there in the first place. They're getting artificially induced by weed, and then it ends up plummeting down to a point where it's below its natural baseline. So this is the exact reason why whenever you're sober, you can't function. This is why you need to smoke weed to feel normal. This is why you have to smoke weed before you do anything, before you go to the mall, before you go to the movies, before you eat. Because dopamine is essentially the chemical that's responsible for motivation. It's responsible for feeling good. Serotonin is the chemical in your brain that balances out your mood. So what do you think is going to happen if you're artificially inducing these chemicals within your brain? Your body's going to stop naturally producing them. It's going to make your brain chemistry out of whack. It's going to put your brain out of homeostasis. And a lot of people don't realize that shit, bro. Like, a lot of people are wondering to themselves, like, yo, why? Well, I feel such low energy. I just need to smoke. I need to smoke in the morning time to get out of bed. And the reason why you need to smoke to get out of bed is because your brain doesn't have any fucking dopamine in it for you to go ahead and do your daily tasks. So when a lot of people say, like, I'm a functional stoner, I just tell them, like, yo, you're not a functional stoner. Like, the reason why you think you're a functional stoner is because your brain is literally lacking the chemicals it needs to go ahead and do the tasks that you need to do. So you need to smoke weed to go ahead and get the artificial chemicals within your brain to go ahead and do the tasks that you need to do. This is why people think they're productive when they smoke weed, when they're not productive. You're just artificially inducing dopamine, which is the chemical that's responsible for action and motivation, to go ahead and do the thing. So no, there's no such thing as a functional stoner. That's complete bullshit. So after I ended up quitting smoking weed, this is what happened. Everything within my life did a whole 180-degree turn, and everything in my life just ended up skyrocketing. Every single aspect you could think of: my physique, my health, my body, my finances, my social skills, everything. I ended up actually being able to talk to people. I ended up reverting back to that old person who was able to speak to people, kind of like that childlike person who's able to speak to random people on the street, the person who's able to hold a normal conversation. Normal things just ended up being like stimulating again. Like, I could go for a walk in the park and just be completely happy with myself, just going on a walk in the park, where when I was smoking weed, I needed to smoke to feel something. I needed to smoke to not feel like an emotional zombie because I lacked the chemicals in my brain to even feel good. When your brain chemistry ends up rewiring itself, and when your brain chemistry ends up rebalancing itself, you feel like a normal human being again. And a lot of people who smoke weed, they don't know what being sober even feels like. And when I say sober, I'm not talking about the first 5 minutes in the morning when you wake up before you hit your first bong. No, I'm talking about actually having a normal brain. A brain with normal brain chemistry, a brain with normal serotonin levels, a brain with normal dopamine levels. A lot of people who smoke weed, they don't know what that feels like. So of course they're not going to want to be sober because they go a couple of days without smoking, like 3 days. They're like, oh, no, man, yeah, I whatever, bro. Like weed is fine. I didn't notice any difference. I quit for 3 days. I didn't notice any difference. But that's because your brain is still healing itself. Your brain needs time to heal itself before you actually feel the benefits of having a normal brain, having normal brain chemistry. When you quit smoking weed, you gain mental clarity, you gain focus, you gain just sharpness. You're more quick with your words. You're more. It kind of feels like you're running off of like solar power instead of running off of fossil fuels. Like, you don't feel that 5-pound weight in your head when you first wake up in the morning time. You don't feel like that white noise that's just stinging in the back of your head that's kind of like making you tired. Like, you don't feel lethargic. You have energy. You just have like a natural vibrance about you when you end up quitting. You could actually take your goal seriously. You have natural motivation. You feel as if like you could take on the day without having a sip of coffee. You feel like you're just naturally motivated to hit your goals. You get your ambition back. And the reason why this stuff happens is because of the fact that when you quit smoking weed, your brain chemistry literally has the chemicals that it needs for motivation, which is dopamine and serotonin. And there's so many different things when it comes to the science behind it between your brain chemistry and that sort of stuff. But this video would be long as fuck if I get into that. So I'm not going to talk about that in this video. The only thing that you need to know right now is that when you quit smoking weed, everything within your life will change. I have so many different videos that talk about that. So just watch those videos if you want to know that. Right now, I'm going to be talking about how to actually quit smoking weed and actually how to get full control over your addiction. Now, like what I said before, willpower does not work. So if you're trying to use willpower, you need to throw that the fuck out the window, because that's not going to work. And the reason why willpower does not work is because willpower is a finite source. You cannot will your weed addiction away, because think about it. You've tried that. Like, you've literally tried that. Like, you tried willing your weed addiction away. You probably quit before, and then what ends up happening? You end up going back to smoking weed. And every single person I know that said that they're going to quit smoking weed, they end up smoking again, eventually. Every single one. There's not an exception to that. The only exception to that is people who catch like fucking psychosis or schizophrenia or some shit like that from smoking weed, because of course they're going to quit because they're going to go fucking bananas. So of course. But Every single person that I know that's tried to quit smoking weed, and I know a lot of stoners because I'm a stoner myself, and you yourself, you know a lot of people like this too. They say they're gonna quit smoking weed, and then they quit for maybe a couple of days, and then they end up smoking again. So this is why willpower doesn't work. Willpower is a finite source. Your willpower can be different on one day versus the other. You could have poor sleep one night, and your willpower will be less. You'll have less willpower that day. You could break up with your girlfriend and your willpower will be less that day. You could, I don't know, have a bad day at work and your willpower is going to be less that day. Willpower is a finite source, so that's never going to work. And this is the exact same reason why everyone has such issues with smoking weed, because weed is one of those things where it's kind of like really gradual and it doesn't have that many like negative effects within the moment. It has more long-term effects than short-term effects. So people kind of like justify in their brain like, yeah, whatever, one spliff tonight isn't that bad. Versus if you're freaking on heroin or some shit like that, then of course like that's a lot, that's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? That's a big deal. So of course you're gonna kind of like, there's gonna be a lot more friction to do that. Now, this is really important what I'm gonna say right here. One thing that I advocate is not to quit, but to take full control over your addiction, take full control over your usage. Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna leave that in the video, bro. If you guys don't know, I'm in a barbershop right now and like we're closed, so I don't even know why, you know what I'm saying? It's whatever though. I'm just gonna have to wait. One thing that I highly advocate when it comes to quitting weed is not fully quitting weed, but taking full control over your addiction, taking full control over your usage. Because think about this. Quitting weed is actually pretty easy if you think about it. Like if you wanted to quit smoking weed, you could move to a different country that weed's not legal in. You could move there for 6 months, and then technically for 6 months, you've ended up quitting weed. You could throw yourself in prison. You could fucking, I don't know, commit a crime or something like that. Go to prison for 6 months, and then you technically quit weed for that 6 months. But what ends up happening after you come back? You end up going straight back to smoking weed. And the reason for that is because you're the same exact person that you were when you were addicted to weed. Nothing has changed at all. You're still the same exact person. So when you get out of prison, when you move back to a country where weed is legal, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to go straight for the blunts. And I know people who have actually gone through this before. They moved to a country for about 6 months where weed wasn't legal. They come back and then they end up smoking weed again, and they end up developing a full-blown addiction. Now, one thing that I need to mention is that I still smoke, but I'll only smoke maybe about like 1 or 3 times per year, maybe 2 or 3 times per year. I can't even count because I really don't care. But I have full control over my usage. Weed doesn't have a grip on me anymore. I don't care about weed at all. I could literally go the rest of my life without smoking weed and I'll be completely fine. I'm not using willpower to not smoke weed. I genuinely just don't care to smoke weed anymore. I genuinely don't care to smoke weed at all. Like I could literally not smoke weed for the rest of my life and I'll be completely fine. It doesn't have any control over me. I have control over it. And the reason why is because I've shifted my mental framework into one where I don't need weed anymore. So think about this. The person that you are right now has an addiction to weed. You do. Whether you like it or not, you have an addiction to weed. But the person who doesn't have an addiction to weed, they feel as if they don't need to smoke weed. So think about this. The reason why you're addicted to weed is because you have like some sort of psychological subconscious attachment towards weed, right? And some of you probably don't even know the reason why. Like a lot of people, the reason why they have some sort of psychological subconscious attachment to weed is because of the fact that they're trying to escape something. They're not trying to feel certain emotions that they've been kind of like hiding or stuffing down within their subconscious. They're trying to escape something. They're trying to escape some sort of feeling. I know for me, like one big one is that I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Or for you, it could be just the fact that you're not okay with being bored. You're not okay with being with your own thoughts. You're not okay with being with your own mind, because when you are, certain things come up. You start thinking like, shit, man, like fuck, I should have done this. I don't know what I want to do with my life. Like, is my job really gonna, is my life gonna be just this job for the rest of my life? I'm gonna be working the same job for the rest of my life? It's because a lot of people try to cover up their inadequacies with smoking weed, because when you smoke weed, what happens? Everything kind of goes away. You forget about everything. You forget about all the problems within your life. You forget that, you have to work your job tomorrow. You forget that, there's certain things within your life that you need to deal with. A lot of it is escapism, and that's what it is. There are a lot of similarities between people who are addicted to weed. They have similar personality traits, I guess you could say. That's why a lot of people who smoke weed or who are addicted to weed, they're really tight with each other. It's really easy to make friends with people who are addicted to weed. Why? Because there are certain things that you guys bond over. There are certain traumas that you guys bond over. Now, like what I said before, when you quit smoking weed, you're still the same exact person that you were when you were smoking weed, but the difference is that you don't smoke weed anymore. So everything within your life is conformed to the person who was addicted to weed. Your subconscious mind, your identity, your mental, your environment, everything within your life is conformed to that person who is addicted to weed. And the person who is addicted to weed is easily seduced by the entity of weed. And when I say entity, I'm just talking about, think about weed like it's some sort of like, I guess you could say a woman, a woman who's trying to seduce you, like a stripper at a strip club or something like that. Certain people can be seduced by that stripper, but certain people aren't seduced by that stripper. And why is that? Because the difference within their mental framework. Now think about this. We all know that one guy who can hang with the guys who smoke a bunch of weed, right? He'll probably touch the blunt every couple of times. He's in the blunt rotation, but sometimes he's like, no, I just don't feel like smoking today. And why is that? Why is that one person able to say no? How come that one person who smokes weed doesn't develop a whole weed addiction? He likes smoking weed. Like whenever he smokes weed, it's a good time. But how come he's not developing addiction just like you or just like all the other people who are addicted to smoking weed? It's because he has a different mental framework. There's a reason why you're addicted to smoking weed, and there's a reason why he's not addicted to smoking weed. Because he can enjoy weed just as much as you. But there's a reason why you keep going back to the blunt and why he doesn't feel the need to go back to the blunt. It's not because he's using willpower like a fucking crackhead to try to not smoke weed. No. It's because he genuinely just doesn't feel like smoking. And I've gotten myself to that point. I've gotten myself to that level. That person who's not addicted to smoking weed, we'll call him Frank. There's some sort of subconscious attachment or emotional attachment that you have to weed that he doesn't have to weed. So maybe this guy Frank, the guy who's not addicted to smoking weed, the guy who could smoke whenever he wants and has full control over his addiction, maybe he's not hiding from something. Maybe he has good ways of coping with his emotions. Maybe he has a good way or a good method of dealing with the stress. Maybe he has a good way of dealing with the problems within his life. He's not running towards weed to fix that sort of problem. Because a big reason why a lot of people who are addicted to smoking weed, why they smoke weed in the first place, is because they're trying to fill some sort of void. Maybe that person who is not addicted to weed, he has that void already filled by different things. He has different ways of managing stress. So there's a root of the problem that you are not seeing here, and you need to get to the bottom of this. You need to get to the root of the problem and tackle the root of the problem from there. Because you will always go back to smoking weed if you don't fix the root of the problem. No matter how much willpower you use, you will always go back to smoking weed if the root isn't cut. For me, the root of the problem was just the fact that I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew that I wanted to be successful. I knew that I wanted to be rich, but I didn't know how to go about that. So I was trying to hide those emotions or mask those emotions with smoking weed. A lot of you, like what I said before, it could just be the fact that you're not okay with being bored. You're not okay with being with yourself. You're not okay with your mind. And a good way to think about this is what happens whenever you're not high and whenever you're just sitting by yourself with no outward stimulation. So maybe you're in the shower and you're not listening to music and you're just stuck with you and your thoughts. What does your mind automatically go to? Think about that. What does your mind automatically go to? You will find what you're trying to hide from when your mind automatically goes towards that thing multiple different times when you spend time by yourself and when you spend time alone. So the biggest thing that you need to take away from this video is that you need to outgrow your addiction. You need to become a different person who doesn't need weed. You need to essentially improve yourself and get to the point where you're the type of person that doesn't need to smoke weed anymore. You don't need to use weed as some sort of tool. You don't need to use weed as some sort of, I guess you could say, escapism. It's the same exact thing as outgrowing some sort of video game. So let's say you were addicted to Fortnite back in the day, or let's say you were addicted to Minecraft back in the day. You probably don't play those games anymore. Why? Because you outgrew them. You feel as if they don't really give you that mental stimulation anymore. You feel as if they're not really fun anymore. And it's the same exact thing for me. I feel as if weed isn't really fun anymore. I like being sober now. I have certain things that I got to deal with. I have certain responsibilities to take care of. I have certain things that I need to do. I have a life that I'm trying to build. I'm trying to go hit my goals. I'm trying to record these videos. I have a business that I'm trying to run. So when things become more important than smoking weed, then of course you're going to outgrow it. The gym is more important to me than smoking weed. So I need the energy to go to the gym. What you need to do is you need to outgrow the person that was addicted to smoking weed. And there are plenty of different ways of growing, but the easiest one is physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So you need to develop those three things. And once you develop those three things, you will outgrow the need to smoke weed. And this is why I have full control over my usage right now, because I feel as if I just don't need to smoke anymore. I have nothing that's pulling me towards weed. I can't be seduced by the entity of weed anymore. So think about this analogy. So people who watch Breaking Bad, there's this character in Breaking Bad who's like a crackhead whore who Jesse deals with every now and then or whatever. So at the beginning of the show, Jesse kind of deals with that crack whore, right? But then he kind of like, I guess you could say he grows, he levels himself up, and now he's dealing with a girl named Jane. That was his girl. And I guess everyone can agree to this, that Jane was probably 10 times better than that freaking crack whore that he was dealing with before. So after he leveled himself up, do you think he would be seduced by that crack whore anymore? Probably not. Why? Because he's moved on to different things. He leveled himself up and he's moved on to different things. So if you do the same thing within your life, then you're naturally just going to outgrow weed. You're naturally going to get to the point where you feel as if like, yo, I don't need to smoke anymore. I really don't care to smoke anymore. So what you need to be doing is you need to be improving yourself in every single aspect within your life. You need to be improving yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, every single aspect in your life. You kind of have to just lock in. You got to dial in. And when I say getting to the root of the issue, I'm talking about emotional growth. I'm talking about spiritual growth. Now, I say this analogy all the time. When you quit smoking weed and you actually end up developing yourself and growing, what's going to happen? You're going to get to the point where you're essentially driving a Lamborghini. Before, when you were addicted to weed and you're the type of person who is able to even be seduced by weed, you were driving a 2001 Toyota Corolla with fucking 300,000 kilometers on it. It rattles every time you drive. The paint is coming off. There's rust all over it. But when you quit smoking weed and then you end up growing as a person, you get to the point where you're driving a Lamborghini. And when I say driving a Lamborghini, you could kind of, I guess you could say, compare that to being a person who's mentally clear, a person who's emotionally stable, a person who's emotionally mature, a person who has good habits. And that feels good, just like how driving a Lamborghini would feel good. So if you get used to driving that Lamborghini, you're not going to want to go back to driving that 2001 Toyota Corolla. You're not going to want to go back to that at all. And even if you do go back to it, let's say your Lamborghini breaks down one day, you're going to drive that 2001 Toyota Corolla because that's what you have left. And you're going to be like, yo, what the fuck? Like, I don't want to drive this. I need to get back to the Lamborghini. So what you're going to do is you're going to do everything within your power to get back to the Lamborghini. And this is what it's like for me right now. Whenever I smoke weed, and there's been times where I'd smoke like multiple times within a week or something like that. This is like when I first kind of got the gist of how to actually take full control of the addiction. I would be at that Lamborghini stage. I'd feel good. And then I'd smoke maybe like 3 days in a row. And then I'd be like, I don't like this. I feel like shit. I notice that my brain fog is just increasing. I notice that I feel lethargic in the morning time. I notice that it's affecting my workouts in the gym in the morning time. I notice that, I can't speak as properly. I notice that it's ruining my social skills. I feel a bit more awkward when I'm talking to people. So me experiencing what it felt like to be sober with a clear mind, a normal brain with normal brain chemistry, and then going back to the person who was addicted to smoking weed. It's just data. Now I could make the decision after experiencing both and be like, yeah, I don't want to go back to smoking weed every single day. And then what happens? I go back to my normal stuff. I go back to driving the Lamborghini. I have one friend who quit smoking weed for, I think it was like 2 years or something like that. And he grew within those 2 years. Like, he was on his shit. He was on his grind. He was on his shit. He grew within those 2 years. And what ended up happening? He ended up coming across weed again. He ended up introducing weed again. And he started smoking every single day or taking weed every single day for, I think, about like 2 or 3 weeks straight. And then after that, he was like, yeah, I'm done with this. I can't do this shit. I feel fucking stupid. I feel retarded right now. Like, it just fucks everything up. And after that, he never touched it again. And the reason for that is because he's used to what it feels like to have a normal brain. So this is the thing. Once you grow as a person, you actually level up, you're naturally not going to want to smoke weed anymore. It just becomes a thing that you outgrow. It just becomes something in the past. You just start looking at it as something that you used to do when you were a kid. You don't feel any emotional connection to it. You don't feel any emotional attachment to it. So this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize. They try to use willpower to quit smoking weed. But that's not going to work because, fuck, you tried that how many times now and it hasn't worked. You're swimming upstream when you do that because everything within your being and everything within your body and your whole identity can be seduced, is catered towards being seduced by the entity of weed. So of course willpower isn't going to work because it's a finite source, and then one day your willpower isn't going to be there, so you're going to end up being seduced by it. But if you become the person that can't be seduced by it, then what do you think is going to happen? You're just not going to be seduced by it. So this is exactly what I went through. And it took me 5 years to realize this. And it doesn't need to take you 5 years to realize this. It really doesn't. If you guys want to speed run this whole process, click the link in the description because I have a program where I basically take people and then I bring them through a whole growth process of different weekly tasks. Pretty easy stuff, honestly. It's actually really easy stuff. And then at the end of the program, I make them smoke again. And a lot of people would look at that and they think like, yo, what the fuck? Like, you're making us smoke again at the end of the program. But the reason why I do that is not so you could quit, so you could take full control over your weed addiction. You become the type of person who doesn't need to smoke weed anymore. So when you smoke at the end of the program, what happens? You realize that you don't need to smoke weed. You realize that you don't need to smoke weed anymore. You won't know that you changed unless you smoke weed and you notice that, yeah, I feel as if I don't really care to smoke weed anymore. So by the end of the program, it puts you in a mental framework to where you feel as if you just don't need weed anymore. So that's why I make people smoke at the end of the program, because weed ends up becoming a choice instead of becoming a habit. It becomes something that you can take or leave, but you choose to leave it because the fact that you're not the type of person who even needs weed anymore. So yeah, guys, click the link in the description below to get access to that program. Trust me, guys, if you want to speed run this whole process, if you guys don't want to spend 5 years like what I did, then click the link in the description.